So welcome everybody. James Hall here, Global CTO for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Last one from me in this session or this series that we're doing. So to recap, if you've watched the previous one, hopefully you have, we talked a lot about PCE. Well, actually what we talked about was managed, partially managed and unmanaged, but PCE being the kind of flagship on-premise public cloud experience for our customers. We're now going to talk about that versus something that was announced at Discover in June this year, which is PCBE, so Private Cloud Enterprise, Private Cloud Business Edition. So what's the difference? So firstly, when we talk about PCBE, actually what it's based on is compute, networking, and actually that depends on the customer, because that could be brownfield, and then we talk about storage. And actually what this is, for the people that might already realize this is DHCI. So today, if the customer wants or doesn't want to be prescriptive or controlled by the choices here because they are fairly constricted, the starting point is too big because a lot of our business is done actually in SMB, and that tends to be sub 100 terabytes. For a lot of organizations, sometimes less than that. I'm going to get my arrow the wrong way. I think it's that way, sub 100 terabytes. So this doesn't fit every single customer or every single use case. However, a lot of our customers, especially in this space where I might be the only person managing the infrastructure, or there might be two of us, I might be having 10 remote locations, one primary data center, one secondary. I might just have a primary. I might have a primary and a secondary. There's a lot of variations that you get in the SMB world. This is going to be too big, too expensive, and too complex. So PCBE, which has been born out of DHCI, is designed to give our customers the cloud-like experience, but the choice of whether it wants to be managed by them, which for most customers, they are managing DHCI themselves, or maybe, just maybe, they want HPE to do IaaS. So, the customer doesn't want to be responsible for firmware management and firmware patching, and they want maybe HPE to do this because they're going down a subscription or a consumption route. So again, key thing here is this is typically GreenLake Flex. That's consumption. And this can be Flex, or probably more commonly now will be subscription. So you go sit with your customer, you work through the GreenLake Cloud Platform for a bunch of questions that defines, what compute you need, what connectivity you need in terms of whether you want to switch or whether you want switches or no switches, starting capacity, which should match roughly the amount of data that the customer has, and a variable. So we get to a point where you get a price for the compute, the networking, and the storage. The networking if you're doing it, if you're not, then obviously not. Potentially then, you can go to HPE Services, which was GMS, and maybe get us to do the firmware management and stuff like that. It can also be deployed wherever the customer wants. So that could be one of our colos, and we can include that price in the subscription, or it might be in the customer's data center, or it might be a remote location. So let's think about the difference here. Fully managed up to self-service, could be fully managed by the customer, more choice for the customer, could be fully managed by you as the partner. And then let's think about the value proposition of DHCI and why it exists. So the main reason it exists is you can scale independently your compute and your storage. And it was designed because HCI, which is prevalent everywhere today, had problems when it came to scaling. So you may need capacity, but if you need capacity, you've got to go and buy compute and memory, which you don't necessarily need. If you're buying compute, you're buying cores or CPUs, it's going to cost you money from a licensing point of view. Or maybe you need the performance, but you don't need the capacity. So we have a lot of customers that ended up with an imbalance in their HCI environments, either too much capacity or too much compute and cost in the compute. And that's really where DHCI was born out of, was, okay, how do we take a traditional three-tier architecture, so compute, networking, and storage, but provide this experience? So that started by, a integration between vSphere and the array. The array. So in that world, we're talking about a plugin. So the plugin goes into vCenter. From a customer's point of view, I can now provision, LUNs or volumes. I can do protection policies. I can do failover and stuff like that. So we fix kind of the single pane of glass once the system's up and running. Then we had to fix the other issue, which is in the HCI world, click, 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 and the whole thing builds itself. And that was known as the stack manager. So the stack manager was the first thing that you logged into, and it took all of your bare metal into a fully fledged ESX cluster with vSphere so that you were up and running in hours and not days. And because it was automated, we took a lot of human effort out, but also a lot of human where the issue resides between the chair and the keyboard, because someone puts a 2 instead of a 3 for an IP address, or there's a mismatch in something that sits in there. The stack manager was all about avoiding all the manual stages to build the entire environment, but also then run a complete check to make sure that it was actually configured correctly so that you could start provisioning straight away. So that's what DHCI was: value proposition, scale independently, based on industry-leading technology, combined with the plugin that we had for vCenter so that you could provision and manage everything through the vCenter plugin inside vCenter itself. And the stack manager was about getting it up and running. And the stack manager also did what we call one-click upgrades. So we would release, through InfoSight, a ratified firmware and software pack, which would cover everything in the stack: the array, the ESX servers, the firmware on the servers, the firmware on the storage. If it was the networking, everything apart from vCenter. So we would verify the configuration that was good to be upgraded. We'd verify the pack that we got from InfoSight, and then you go into one-click upgrade, and we would move VMs from one physical server to another, then upgrade that one. Everything would happen in an automated fashion. You'd have to kind of monitor it, but it was very straightforward. And that was one of the big selling points, again, of HCI, was this kind of one-click upgrade. So plugin, stack manager to build, plugin to manage, one-click upgrade to provide the HCI experience. So then we had, this is where PCBE, so Private Cloud Business Edition, we had customers that are kind of like, I want this service console, but I can't afford that, or that's too big for me, or it's too prescriptive, but I want that capability. So we built an application inside the GreenLake Cloud Platform, GLCP, called PCBE, and that platform does all of these things. So this actually, the stack manager is now known internally as the implementation. So you order your platforms, you order your systems, you go into the GreenLake Cloud Platform, you go into PCBE, you do all of your pre-configurations, IP addresses, management networks, all the stuff that you would normally do when the kit arrives. You can pre-plug that into a blueprint. And when the kit arrives, as soon as it starts dialing home, you can basically point the blueprint at the infrastructure and build everything. No being in the data center, no connecting to the data center. So that benefit without physically having or logically having to go anywhere near it. So get kit up and running really quickly without having to connect to it or be there is the added additional bonus that you get through PCBE. And then we had, the capability to what we call fleet manage. So I want a view of, maybe I've only got one of them, right? Maybe we've got customers in the US that have like 25 DHCI stacks. I want a centralized location that tells me how saturated I am from a performance perspective, how much capacity I'm using. We use application tagging. So how many SQL runs or volumes do I have? How many Oracle systems do I have? How many virtual machines or plain ESX servers do I have? All of the stuff that you'd normally have to go to individually to each box or each vCenter to find out is all in DataOps Manager. So giving you complete visibility of your infrastructure regardless of where it resides. So that's kind of your days, day one and day two operations. It's also where we now have moved the one-click upgrade. So it goes into the DataOps Manager. We give you a ratified pack. In the DataOps Manager, you can do all of the pre-checks that we were doing down here remotely for all your systems, regardless of where they are, assuming that they're, provided they're dialing home, and, do the one click and then have it run in the same way that it did on premise. So fully automated and controlled. So we kept that capability. So the last part was, well, how do we give the cloud experience? Because we're not doing this. And we don't want to put the hybrid IT console on here because it's too big a project and it requires a lot of professional services. So today, inside this application, you can now provision VMs on-premise. You can do instances in AWS with either Elastic Block Storage or RDS, Relational Database Storage. And very soon, you will also be able to, Azure, also be able to provision workloads in Azure. So I could be one person managing two sites. I could be a team of two. I could be like an investment bank and be a team of 2,000. I can take my infrastructure from box to ready to provision on using the Blueprint service. I can then maintain and manage all of my patching across the entire stack through what was the one-click upgrade, which is now in DataOps Manager. I can have a fleet view of anything that's going on in my environment, performance, capacity utilization, where I'm replicating to. Is it single failover? Is it periodic replication? All of my ports and all of my health combined with our AI ops, because that works in this environment. So that gives us visibility from the VM to the storage. So that's included in this. And now I can go into, I'll remain in the same application and provision VMs on-premise, applications or instances in AWS, and very soon Azure. So for those organizations where this is too big, too complex, or they don't want it managed, they don't want to go down the partially managed route because it's too, they want a kind of almost like an appliance-based approach. Private Cloud Business Edition is exactly that. Built on the pedigree and DNA of DHCI, with all the benefits of HCI, including the additional benefit of scaling independently, with a bunch of applications inside the GreenLake cloud platform that let me take bare metal hardware to a fully configured ESX cluster, ready to provision virtual machines on-premise, in the public cloud, or the two biggest public cloud vendors that we see today, combined with fleet management and my one-click upgrade. This, for the vast majority of our customers, whether it's subscription, whether it's CapEx, whether it's lease, whether it's on a flex contract, will be probably one of the biggest things that we can give to customers, or one of the biggest things that you can take to customers today. Take them the private cloud, or actually take them the public cloud experience, on-prem or in one of our colos or in your colo, whatever it might be, with all of the capabilities that you would expect from a public cloud. Provisioning, management, one-click upgrades, building from scratch, fleet management, but more importantly, actually being able to provision in 3 different locations today. We'll add GCP at some point, but today on-prem, AWS and Azure. And by the way, I think the smallest, from a subscription point of view, I think the smallest storage starting point is 20 terabytes. So much smaller than over here. It is a minimum of 4 servers because that's what ESX likes. You can choose your networking switch or we can deliver that to you. But this will fit the needs of pretty much every customer that we see today and give them the cloud-like experience and the control to simplify their world, simplify their lives, and give them either time back to go do something more valuable or maybe just let them go home on time. And a lot of our business today, when you look at where a lot of our business is done today, it is done in these customers. It's a great value proposition for them. It lets you differentiate between the people you're competing with. It gives the customer the perfect experience, and it's built on industry-leading technology with industry-now leading management and control. Hopefully, PCE versus PCBE has been useful. Go out there, understand the value proposition. We have demo portals for both of these actually, and that's very powerful with customers. If you need anything, come to TD SignX and HPE, and we'll help you go and sell in the field. But for now, happy selling.